Welcome back, my friends, to episode 3 of the Radical Purpose series. We got Radical Purpose book here and just sharing with you these principles of living with radical purpose from the lives of Milton Hershey, Walt Disney, and Steve Jobs, my dissertation work that's now going to be released in 3 installments: Radical Purpose, Radical Products, Radical People. And so before we jump in, I want you to just pause me for a second. Whether you're driving, whether you're at the gym, you're cooking, you're walking, just pause internally for a moment. What do you think about what we've uncovered so far? If you haven't listened to episode 1 and 2, episode 1 was about the soil where you were planted, what shaped your context, the world you inherited, not the world you chose. And then episode 2, then it began to talk about the seed, the wiring, the traits that showed up early, the tendencies you carried before you even had language for leadership. Now today, episode 3. I need you to hear me clearly. If episode 2 and then episode 1 before it helped you to understand your beginning, episode 3 helps you to understand your becoming. Because today we're going to talk about skills, not talents, not gifts, not traits, skills. And here's the revelation I want you to sit with. Traits create potential. Skills create power. Traits point you in the right direction. Skills move you in the right direction. You see, traits whisper who you might be. Skills shape who you become. And the most exciting part, you learn skills through work, through doing, through trying, through failing, through giving yourself fully to something that matters. So today, you and I, we're going to explore how the early work of these 3 visionary leaders, Milton Hershey, Walt Disney, and Steve Jobs, didn't just reveal their traits. It formed their skills, and those skills shaped their destiny. So this episode is about wonder through work. The idea that when you commit yourself to a craft deeply enough, consistently enough, passionately enough, something awakens in you that talent alone can never unlock. All right? You ready? All right, let's go. But before we dive into the stories, I want to ask you a question, and this one might surprise you. What was the first thing you ever became good at? I want you to think about it. Not perfect, not world-class, just good. Was it drawing? Was it fixing things, telling stories? Maybe it was explaining some concepts. Maybe it was organizing. Maybe you were really good at playing an instrument. Sports, baking, caring for others. Maybe it's quietly solving problems. Maybe you're a writer. Maybe you're a designer. Maybe you negotiated your way out of trouble. Or maybe working hard without being asked. Whatever that thing was, it matters more than you know. Because that early goodness is how your skills began forming. You see, where traits are natural, skills require effort. Traits are instinctive, skills, they require practice. Traits are gifts, skills, well, they're grit. And my friend, every visionary leader, Hershey, Disney, and Jobs included, became who they became not because they were born exceptional, but because they worked exceptionally. Let me prove it to you. Let's go back to Milton Hershey, the quiet kid, the listener, the observer. Here's what most people never understand about Milton Hershey for those who have gone back to research. He didn't build an empire because he had a good idea. He built an empire because he mastered a craft. Let me bring you into that confection shop. I want you to picture it. You can almost smell the caramel, steam rising from those copper kettles, sugar bubbling, wood floors creaking, hands sticky, heat radiating from every corner. This wasn't glamorous, wasn't romantic, wasn't even visionary. It was just work. It was hard work. And Milton Hershey loved it. I'll show you why. Milton developed unbelievably sharp precision, not because someone trained him in a classroom, but because he had refused to do things halfway. You see, he learned temperature, timing, texture, ratios, consistency, process, customer taste over and over and over. You see, precision is a skill, a hard-earned skill, and it can't be faked. You see, there's that skill, and then the next skill is one that no one talks about. Milton Hershey didn't just make candy. He watched people eat it. He studied the reactions. He learned what delighted them, what disappointed them. He refined based on real-world feedback. You see, observation is another skill that's leadership derived, and one of the most powerful there is. Another skill, endurance. Those early failures in Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, that was the training ground for endurance. You don't get endurance by reading about it. You get endurance by working through it. And then yet another skill, systems building. By the time Hershey built his chocolate company, he wasn't trying ideas. He was applying skills forged through labor. He began to understand these supply chains, production flow, market timing, resource allocation, scaling processes, consistency at volume. Do you see what's happening here? Traits pointed him. Skills elevated him. You see, traits say, I'm wired for this. Skills say, I can execute this. Traits whisper possibilities. Skills deliver outcomes. You see, this is the hallmark of skill development in Hershey. Now I want to transition with you to Disney. Because if Hershey learned precision, Walt learned expression through the same kind of work. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever been around someone who was so creative that it almost felt like their imagination had gravity? That was Walt. But I want you to listen carefully. Creativity alone didn't make him the Walt Disney. It was hours and hours and hours and hours of drawing, observing, sketching, animating, failing, and trying again. That's what built his skill. I want to show you how his skills formed and walk with me. Because Walt, he drew constantly, no surprise. Not because he had to, but because he couldn't stop. You see, he didn't wait for inspiration. He built skill through repetition. He sharpened the line, the proportion, the motion, the expression, the storytelling, the humor, emotion through art. You see, this wasn't talent anymore. It was craftsmanship. And then he refined the skill of storytelling. Man, as Walt developed his art, he developed something deeper. The ability to share and draw people in. He learned the idea of structuring your story, pacing, timing, especially with comedy and emotion, and how to develop these characters. You see, he studied what made people smile. He learned to speak to the heart, not just the eye. And then couple that with this idea of innovation through frustration. Every time he had a limitation, technical, financial, he innovated. He didn't say, we can't. He said, there has to be a way. Innovation is a skill, friend. It's a skill formed under pressure. You see, these are some of the skills Walt had, but didn't end there. He has so many more skills, including leadership through vision. As Walt's skills progressed and his projects grew, he learned to communicate, to persuade, to rally people around a dream. He learned how to pitch ideas, defend them, take creative risks. Hey friend, it's your friend, Dr. Nate Salah. If you've ever wondered how your leadership style reflects Jesus, or how it could, I've got something just for you. It's called the Incarnational Instrument, And it's a powerful self-assessment we created to help you discover your biblical identity, your leadership profile through the lens of Christ. It's practical, it's insightful, and it's completely free for our podcast community. Just head to biblicalidentity.com to take yours today. That's biblicalidentity.com, and find out how you lead and how you can lead holy. Collaborate, inspire teams. These aren't traits. They're hard-earned leadership skills. And Walt turned wonder into work, and work into wonder. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about Steve Jobs, because his story shows us something so powerful, it's almost startling. Jobs had traits, intensity, curiosity. He had idealism, but his skills, there's something else. I want to walk you through them. One of the skills that is remarkable, design literacy. Jobs wasn't a designer by trade. He became one by obsession. He studied calligraphy. He studied architecture. He studied product curves, color palettes. Studied negative spaces, typography, proportion, balance. You see, this wasn't classroom learning. It was immersion. See, design literacy was a skill through his trained eye. And you might not think of this as a skill, but I would put in the skill category simplification. Simplification is one of the hardest skills in the world. The Jobs mastered a reduction of variables, clarity, focus, elimination of unnecessary things, and in essence, driving toward that. You see, it takes more than skill to make something simple. It takes something skillful to make it less complex. And communication is a skill. This one's huge. Jobs learned how to communicate vision with intensity, with clarity, with persuasion, with story, with emotion. And this wasn't natural. It was practiced. And I wonder how many people would think that integration was a skill. To integrate hardware, software, design, engineering, use behavior. That's a skill a handful of people can develop. Jobs learn to synthesize, to bring pieces together into a whole. It's mastery, not talent. Mystery. You see, it's important to understand so that we can pull this back to us. I want to ask you something in light of what we just shared. What is the work that formed your skill? Not your job, not your title, your skill. What do you think about it? What did you work at, practice, repeat, refine, fail at, return to, stick with, grow in, get better at, without even realizing how much it would shape your future? Because here's the truth. Most people miss this. Your purpose grows through the skills you practice long before you understand why. Skills are like scaffolding for purpose. Every time you repeated something, every time you worked hard, every time you got up again, you were building a skill scaffold. And when traits and skills stack on top of each other, well, that's where leadership emerges. You see, traits are identity. Skills are capacity. Traits are direction. Skills are depth. Traits, they whisper. Skills shout. Traits pull you. Skills push you. And see, the combination, well, it's destiny. I want you to reflect with me, not casually, but intentionally. I want you to ask yourself, what was the work what was the work that taught you endurance? Think about that for a moment. For me, I learned how to craft endurance through endurance sports. I did triathlon and marathon, and it galvanized me to work hard and not give up after running and swimming and biking. Well, of course, it would be swimming, biking, and running in a triathlon for hours and hours and hours. I developed endurance. What was the work that taught you precision? For me, precision was developed through all the accounting work I did over those many years and becoming precise in my understanding and my decision making? What was the work that taught you communication? Always love to communicate well. The work that I learned most in communicating effectively was first reading. Learning to read and digest copious amounts of written work was helpful in communication. And then speaking and listening to myself speak. My son would always say that, "Oh, Dad, you listen to yourself too much." It was a way to hone and to continue to develop my communication skills. How about creativity? What was the work that taught you creativity? For me, I used to love to write poetry and short stories that were fictional. Oh, it was helped me so much in my creative side, and of course drawing as well. What was the work that taught you empathy? Well, I would say for me, empathy came largely from walking with people through their own struggles. How about leadership? What was the work that taught you leadership? For me, man, failing over and over again as a leader and learning through the education and through just staying in the trenches, my teams. You see, friend, you didn't gain these skills wherever they came from by accident. If you trace your skills back to their origins, you'll discover there was a moment, a season, a job, a hobby, a responsibility, a failure, some kind of a challenge where something was being formed, and that formation wasn't random. You see, it was preparation. In fact, my world, growing up in a home full of pressure, conflict, instability, I didn't realize it then, but I was developing skills all the time. The skills of reading emotion, of diffusing tension, of responsibility, that endurance I talked about, definitely adaptability, really just learning early, deeply, quickly, learning how to think strategically, solve problems nobody else could at the time because I had no one around me to help. And maybe just the skill of caring fiercely. These weren't traits, they were just skills forged through pressure. And they're skills that I use every single day as a leader today, as a mentor, as an advisor, as a father, as a husband, as an entrepreneur, as a teacher. And I want you to hear this next line because it might rewrite part of your story. Sometimes the work that forms your skills is the work you never would have chosen, but it still formed you. And that formation is sacred. All right. Here's the big idea. Traits reveal who you are, skills shape who you become, and purpose emerges where the two intersect. That's the formula. Traits plus skills equals leadership capacity. Or if I say it another way, traits give you the raw material, skills refine the material, purpose reveals the design. And if I'm going to ask something bold, I'm going to ask you this. What's the skill you've been avoiding? Seriously, every leader has one. Communication, conflict, delegation, planning, discipline, courage, creativity. Maybe it's financial literacy, technical mastery, emotional regulation. Hello. Maybe it's boundaries. Maybe it's consistency. Which one have you been brushing aside? Because here's the truth, the skill you avoid is often the skill that unlocks the next level of your leadership. So this week, I want you to reflect on these 5 questions. 1, what skills have my experiences forged in me? List them. Don't downplay them. Take some time. What work has sharpened me more than anything else? Look for some patterns that have developed, like in my book. Which skills do I need to develop right now? And be honest with yourself. Or what skill is currently capping my potential? There is always one or more. And lastly, which skill, if mastered, would transform my leadership? Friend, It's your next assignment. Let me leave you with this. You are not the product of your past. You are the product of your formation. Traits planted the seeds. Skills cultivated the seeds. Purpose was that fruit. So next week in episode 4, we're going to shift to something special. That spark, that hidden flame, the imagination and curiosity that ignite vision. And it's one of my favorite of the chapters in this book. Can't wait to see you then. I'm Dr. Nate Salah, and this is a call to leadership. Thank you so much for supporting this program. I'd like to pray for you for just a moment that God realigns the heart away from pressure, pride, performance, back to His presence. Let us grow in God's wisdom. Let us give from our overflow, and let us go love radically in every place God sends us. Make us holy, Lord. Set us apart, not just successful, but surrendered. In Jesus' name, amen.